Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Natalia Lafourcade album, Cancionera. It's been a quiet couple of weeks for new releases, at least ones I've been hugely invested in, and so I wanted to just go back and review a handful of albums from earlier in the year that I didn't manage to get around to when they came out. And of course, an album that I did really want to get around to reviewing some point is Natalia Lafourcade's 11th album, and of course the follow-up to her absolutely fantastic 2022 album, De Todas las Flores. Before I get too deep into this review, I do want to give the full disclaimer that I do not speak Spanish, so I do just want to apologize in advance for the inevitable scenario in which I mispronounce a hell of a lot of words in this review. Much like De Todas las Flores, Cancionera is still a very long and epic folk album, which is a style that Natalia Lafourcade always does incredibly well. She, of course, uses many different moments on this album as an opportunity to showcase her insane talent as a vocalist, with an absolutely amazing selection of styles and ranges shown in her voice. I think another thing that has also helped, especially by this album's length, is just how many different styles and vibes the music is able to give off as well, with there being so many moments that are so fun and playful and even quite lighthearted, but then you also have the much more mellow and very progressive moments as well. I think that the opening track, Apertura Cancionera, is a fantastic example of this, being completely instrumental but still managing to be one of the most atmospheric songs on the whole album, just with the way it slowly builds and progresses in genuinely such a beautiful way. I do also love how consistent the piano is on this track, being I suppose the backbone of the whole sound, but there still being so many other instruments happening around it in an almost orchestral fashion. And on the whole, I'm just so impressed by the absolutely incredible range of styles and vibes that are shown off in just a 5-minute instrumental track. The title track then does tone it down quite a bit, especially compared to the intro, just in terms of the complexity of the arrangements, with this song mostly just being Natalia and her guitar, at least for the first half. However, like I've already mentioned, the progression on this track is absolutely brilliant, as there are various other elements and instruments that start coming in, everything just slowly falls into place, eventually just becoming such an incredible atmosphere. And I even like the slight jazz kind of influence there is on this track as well, being quite a unique style. Cocos en la Playa is the first song that demonstrates the album's absolute versatility, with this one just overall being such a fun and light-hearted song, obviously being quite the sound change from the much more mellow and progressive first two. I do love how playful Natalia's voice sounds on this track, as well as the very wide selection of instruments, including even some brass in there, which again gives it that jazzy kind of feel, which I absolutely love, and sounds really good on this particular track. Como Quisiera Quererte is then more of a return to the kind of sound that the first two songs have, or without much of a sense of that kind of mysterious feeling that they did have. And while I do love the incredible range of styles that this album is able to show off, I think when it's done like this in such quick succession, it's maybe just a little bit too much, especially with this one being so close to the opening two tracks, and that lack of sense of mystery and suspense I think does take away from it quite a bit, which is a shame because I think this is genuinely still a great song on its own. Again, just having that piano that I love, and again a really great progression, but I think it's just its position in the album that does end up holding it back. Amor Clandestino is another track that again I just love for its piano, and while it's not the primary instrument, I think it still does a lot of carrying, with this song mostly just thriving off of its simplicity, with it being quite bare bones when it comes down to it, but somehow all of that empty space still feels like it's being used tactically. And I think that it does just make the instruments that are there, being most notably the piano and of course the brilliant vocals, all that much more powerful. Las Gritas de Cristal, I think, has some of the absolute best string work on the whole album, and to be honest, it's something that really just does make me wish it had more of a presence overall. Again, there is a lot of empty space on this track, but I've always appreciated Natalia for her ability to create such captivating music even with such simple and minimalistic arrangements. I think on this particular track I also love how much of a slow burn it is. Again, just having such a progressive element, but in a way that just keeps you wanting the song to go on. El Coconito, much like Cocos en la Playa, is again a much more playful and light-hearted song, and I do really like a lot of these moments that the album provides, just being a nice little break from the much more intense and progressive moments. And again, I do just love the very playful approach to the vocals on this track too, which I think just really helps with the very nice and light-hearted atmosphere that it has. And then the album continues the sound with El Palomo y la Negra, with this track again going for a much more jazzy kind of sound, which I think is used so tastefully, although this time obviously in a much more light-hearted way compared to how it's been used before. I do love how much is going on this track, with a lot of the arrangements being some of the most dense on the whole album, which again, despite a lot of the moments also being so much more minimalistic, this style is still blended in absolutely seamlessly. I do love how pretty much every single instrument feels like it's making a worthy contribution, and each one gets its moment to shine, and it all just comes together to create such a perfectly crafted song with an almost big band kind of feel in a way. Cariñito de Acapulco is another absolutely fantastic song with a much more mysterious kind of vibe, but still even has that dinner jazzy kind of piano which I think actually sounds great on this track too. For the most part, it is just a pretty simple track compared to a lot of what we've heard so far. However, I think overall what this song does best is just its incredible atmosphere, particularly in many of the moments where again you have those string arrangements that just enhance the whole experience by so much, especially in some moments where again you have these absolutely beautiful string arrangements that just enhance the whole experience of the song so much. La Bruja then completely tones down the vibes, just going back to a much more simple vocals and guitar song. And I think this is just another one of those where as much as I love this song, I think that its placement in the album could have been a lot better, with it just being such a harsh contrast from the much more complex song before it, and then going straight into a much softer and more minimalist track is quite a harsh tone shift, I think. And in a way, I do almost kind of wish that the moments like this song in particular were actually in the majority, with them being easily some of my absolute favourite moments on the album, and of course the ones that are there I do absolutely love them, but I think that in a way they just don't mix quite as well as I would like them to. Luna Creciente fully embraces a much more moody atmosphere, with these very echoey kind of effects on all the instruments, as well as of course Natalia's voice being so much more mellow on this track too, which again, I know I've said it before, but it truly is just testament to how brilliant of a vocalist she is, just with how she's able to show off such a wide range of styles in just one project. And despite there being just a handful of pacing issues here and there, I think on the whole, vocals at least, she blends them perfectly. And then Lágrimas Cancioneras is somewhat of a reprise of the opening track, again just being a very long, progressive, and completely instrumental track. And I do love it for that, not only because it's just a style I love, I think she does it incredibly well, and of course just the atmosphere and everything about this song is amazing, but I also just love it when albums come full circle, and when the opening track and the closing track are in some way related to each other. And I think when an album is able to pull off not only that idea, but also when it sounds incredible, is always something that I'm going to praise. And then you do also have the two acoustic songs at the end, which I'm not 100% sure why or how these made it into the official track list and not just as bonus tracks, given that they are obviously just re-recordings of songs that are already on the album. And I'm also not 100% sure why acoustic versions of folk songs need to exist, just because being acoustic is really one of the defining features of the genre. But they are obviously still perfectly good, and I'm not going to complain about having more Natalia Lafourcade to listen to. And so while the pacing on this album I think is far from perfect, I think a lot of it is still done reasonably well, and especially just the wide range of styles that are showcased, as well as just all-around incredible performances and writing, still easily all come together to make this easily one of my favourite Natalia Lafourcade albums of her discography so far, and which is why I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.